Good afternoon to you. Welcome to today's webinar. It's a practical guide to managing benefits on projects. And our presenter today is Mark Crisp. Hopefully this is an event that you can enjoy regardless of the weather. The webinar is brought to you today by the PMI UK Digital Events team. And I'm Merv Wyeth, your host for today. And I'm supported by Juliana Souza Campos in the background. And she'll deal with any admin or technical issues that may arise. Let's just advance my slide. Sorry about that. So in thinking about a context for this webinar, I was struck by its relevance and its timeliness. Many of you will be familiar with the PMI Pulse of the Profession publications, including the 2016 series of papers about benefits realization management. The latest report, based on a survey of more than 5,000 members, has the subtitle Expanding the value delivery landscape to address the cost of low performance. The report distinguishes between champion organizations from underperformers. Champions are defined as organizations with 80% or more of projects being completed on time, on budget, meeting business intent, and having high benefits realization maturity. Champion organizations waste a lot less money than underperformers. In the foreword to the report, Mark Langley, pictured here, he emphasizes the vital link between projects and strategy, which requires a steady focus on benefits. However, only 1 in 3 organizations report high benefits realization maturity. And high BRM means consistently tracking whether projects are helping an organization to achieve its large strategic goals, rather than simply managing projects based on traditional outputs, such as time, scope, and budget. So moving on to today's webinar, what is its purpose? Well, we've really identified 4 things that the webinar can do for you, the participants. Mark will provide a structured approach to capture value on projects. He will outline a process to identify, plan, and realize benefits across the full benefits lifecycle. He will share some helpful tips and tools that you can use to increase your chances of success, and based on his many years of experience, provide insights that, if you apply them, will make a real difference. You might even become champion organizations. So let me introduce our speaker to you. Mark works for an organization called DXC Technology, which is described on Google as the world's leading independent end-to-end IT services and solutions company, helping clients harness the power of innovation to thrive on change. He's worked in the field of IT project management for the past 20 years. And during that time, he has successfully managed and delivered multi-million-pound projects in manufacturing, retail, and the public sector. Whilst Mark was working at HP, he undertook a 5-year partnership with Cranfield University, investigating how to optimize project management in large corporations. The wide-ranging study included PMOs, project management training, complexity and risk management. His work involved testing out new ideas, including ways to manage benefits more effectively. More recently, Mark has focused on helping other project managers fulfill their potential by working with them to improve PM processes and provide them with the tools to enable them to do this. Additionally, he coaches up-and-coming project managers looking to make a career out of project management, and he's been a speaker at various PMI events throughout the UK. Mark is a big-picture thinker and likes to challenge people's perception of project management and how best to go about it. So there we have Mark, and with no further ado, what I'd like to do is hand over to Mark to bring our presentation. So, Mark, let me just give you control.
Thank you very much. Give me a sec. Just let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, Mark, that's clear.
Lovely. Okay, thanks very much, Merv, for that introduction. It saves me having to do it myself. Just very quickly on the DXC side of things. DXC, a lot of people haven't heard of, but essentially it is a company that's come out of the merger of CSC, who do IT outsourcing, and HP, their enterprise services organization, which was also doing IT outsourcing. They've come together, and now they're the biggest, certainly in this country, IT outsourcing organisation in the UK. So the purpose of this presentation is to try and give you a guide on benefits and how you can do it better in projects. Some of the information tends to be to do with IT projects, but what I've found, and certainly in talking to people that I've given this presentation to, that it can apply equally to any particular organisation and any particular area. Some of the things that we do can be applied to those organisations. So it's entirely relevant for people that are not in the IT industry as well. So just the agenda then, very quickly. I'm going to give a very brief background on why do we need to capture benefits. I think most people on this call probably recognise that that is an important thing to do. And then we'll go through a process for being able to identify benefits and then make sure that we plan to realise those benefits, executing that plan, and then review and evaluate them at the end. And then hopefully we shall have some time, about 10-15 minutes at the end, for a few questions. So I'm going to start with a Dilbert cartoon. I do like Dilbert cartoons. Essentially, the problem that we have at the moment with projects is that over the last 4 decades, about 70% of projects fail. Now, in the last 2 or 3 years, we're starting to see that number come down very slightly, which is good news. But we've still got a very high percentage of projects that fail. But interestingly enough, even though that number stayed roughly the same, what we're seeing is there's lots of different reasons as to why projects fail compared with how it might have been even 10, 20 years ago. So the next slide, excuse me, then shows some of the traditional ways. Those might be associated with the capability that you're delivering as part of a solution. It might be around reliability, the cost of producing it, and schedule overruns. Those tends to be the reasons why projects have failed in the past, and just not being able to deliver in terms of the outputs that they're trying to produce. Nowadays, it tends to be a bit more around the actual failure to deliver the actual business benefits that you're trying to do, and people are recognizing that it's much more about trying to make sure that you've got a set of benefits that you are able to deliver that provide value to the company. So why is it that we're not able to deliver those benefits? What's the problems that are caused and that cause the problems that stop us from delivering value? Well, what we're seeing is the world is getting bigger. Whereas in the old days, maybe the projects that we were doing might only actually hit a very small part of an organization. Nowadays, if you change something in one part of the organization, with everything being interconnected and things, the chances are that it's going to affect other parts of the organization. It might not have been the case back 10, 20 years ago. The speed at which things change nowadays is far greater, and we're seeing technology particularly move on at a rate that is just unprecedented from anything we've seen in the last 20, 100 years, whatever. And what we're also seeing, particularly seeing it recently, is that the actual business environment in which we're working has become quite unclear and uncertain. Things like Brexit, some of the problems that we've got with the way, some of the terrorism problems that we have nowadays, some of the problems that we've got with not having enough resources to be able to help particular people, is just making not everything not quite clear where we're going. And even politically, in certain areas of the world, what's going to happen with changing regimes and changing organizations. So those are some of the things that are making it much more difficult to deliver projects now than it has been in the past. And I think that's something to be conscious of. So if we want to be able to do that, we need to start looking at how do we make sure that we deliver values out of our projects. Now, what I've just showed you there is a set of processes and methods and tools that we've used over time to help to deliver projects. Most of them, pretty much all of them, apart from maybe the change management stuff, is very much focused on how do we manage getting the deliverables out, the outputs of our project successfully. And what we don't really concentrate on is really the outcomes of what we're trying to deliver. And that's really where benefits management fits in. And what I'm suggesting is that all those tools are perfectly valid tools and stuff that you do need to use to make sure you can manage your projects. But there's an extra area that we need to look at, which is about managing the benefits to make sure that we deliver the value out of our projects. So what I'm going to do is take you through a process model that I'm suggesting that you could use for managing benefits. At the top, we've got identifying and structuring benefits, and then in the orange, we would look at then taking those benefits we've identified, make sure that we're actually we plan to make sure that we realize them. Then we execute that plan that we've come up with. Having completed our project, we then now look at reviewing and evaluating the results, and then look for any potential further benefits that we might be able to gain from doing it. So what I'll do is I'll take each of these in turn and go through ways in terms of what we can do. I'll share some tools, tips and things about what you might do, and give some examples as well to help you see how maybe you can use some of this stuff that we've got. There's a lot of stuff to go through, and don't get panicky if you think I've only got through to step 2 and we're getting close to the end, because the majority of the work that you need to do in order to be successful is really in those first 2 stages. So if we take the first one, identify and structure benefits, what we have there is the first thing we really need to do is understand what are the drivers within the organization that are making us do the projects that we're being asked to do. What are the objectives as well that we're trying to achieve in terms of any investment that we might need to be putting in place, and then working out what are the benefits that will help us achieve those objectives, and we will need to look at how they might be measured. The third point here is probably the most important thing in terms of being successful in benefits management, and that is making sure you've got somebody that owns those benefits, because without ownership of benefits, they don't happen. Somebody has to be on point and online for being able to make sure that those benefits happen, and that quite often can't be the project team themselves. It has to be the people in the business. We'll also talk about identifying what changes we need to make sure that we can deliver those benefits, and what are the stakeholder implications of doing that. And then, having identified and structured those benefits, we should be able to come up with a first cut business case. So we'll go through some of that stuff. The first thing I'm going to do is go through a couple of little tools and things and show you how we might be able to identify some of the drivers associated with getting benefits and being able to satisfy the drivers in an organization. So this chart here really shows 3 different axes, the things that a company might really think about doing, and this can really apply to any company. You've got one axis at the top there, which is about the relationship you have with your customer or the users that you've got of any product that you might be producing. Going down to the left at sort of 7, 8 o'clock, you've got operational excellence. That's how good and how cost effective you might be, how well you're able to deliver that product or service. And then in the bottom right, you've got the product and service itself. How good is that product? How much do people really want it? So those are the 3 axes, and really you can think about most of the things that you're delivering as part of a project that would fit in there in terms of some of the drivers. So the circles, what they're trying to represent, the closer that you're into the center, the worse you are in terms of where you are on those particular axes. The middle circle really says if you're at that sort of level, then you're probably fairly successful. The further out you can go, we get to what we call the ring of prosperity, and once we get to that point, you would maybe hope to be the leading company within the industry that you're actually associated with. So what I'll do is just show an example, and the example I've used is my own company in terms of the company I work for, to show what we do, and I'll just explain that, and it'll just sort of help to explain therefore where this is going and how you can use it. So in terms of the relationship we have with our customers, generally we've got a pretty good relationship with our customers. I would say slightly better than average, and it's something that we really pride ourselves on. Our net promoter score in the industry, for those that are aware of that measure, is one of the highest, so that's really good. In terms of the products and the services we provide, we're pretty comfortable with that in terms of what we're producing. We're probably fairly leading edge. I've come from an environment within Hewlett Packard where we had a lot of leading edge technology, which we've been able to bring forward to the party. But where we're not quite so good on is around our operational excellence, and that's essentially because we tend to be a bit more expensive than some of the other companies, and therefore what we're finding is that new kids on the block come in and they're able to do some of the things that we do cheaper than we can do, and therefore that's really an area that we need to focus on. So having sort of plotted that and really thought about it, I have been asked, why haven't you got numbers on the scale? Well, it's not really a numbers or a grading thing. It's really about understanding where you are in comparison with your competitors potentially, and where do you think you need to spend the money. So if you look at this, you'd say, well, if you're too expensive, then maybe you really need to look at ways of being able to reduce your cost. But at the same time, you need to make sure that you don't lose that good relationship with the customer, and that the products and the services that you deliver are still to a good level of quality as well. So there may be some things you say, okay, we need to do some stuff focused around the cost side of things, or you may decide, well, actually, I'm not too worried about being expensive, particularly if you're in Rolls-Royce business or something. You may well say that the really important thing is the customer and the product that you provide. People are quite prepared to pay the extra money for having that level of good customer and good relations and the good product as well. So it's something to use to give you to think about, say, where do we want to invest the money that we've got for being able to improve the things that we're doing, and where we want to do particular projects. This next slide really shows different ways to think about how the organization is going to work. So if I look at the right-hand side, which we call the ends, what we're trying to say is it may well be that the company that you're in is looking at where it needs to be in the future. What are the things that they need to do in order to be able to be competitive with other companies? It may be that the stuff that you're doing is just out of date, not required anymore. I mean, examples of that might be the most current example I can think of is Toys R Us, where they're in danger of going into Chapter 11. And the reasons being given is that they've just not got a good online presence. They very much rely on the shops that they've got. The shops they've got tend to be in expensive places. They've got too many of them. The leases they've got on the buildings that they use tend to be quite high, and they've not really done anything about trying to go with the times. So that might be one area that you look at, is how do we make sure that we move the organization to be somewhere where we can be competitive with other companies. However, sometimes by doing that, what you find is if you find that you're going to a different area, then the tools, the people, the resources and things that you've got aren't up to being able to deliver that new vision of what the company might be doing. So just to use a silly example, if you were a holiday company and were always delivering holidays that went to cheap places in Spain and France, and had this really good way of doing that, then you might not want to change your model to suddenly be providing holidays to the North Pole, because you've not got the experience in doing that, the facilities to do that, the networks to do that, etc., etc. So it might be that you want to spend your time at the other end of the scale, saying what have I got in terms of resources, tools, etc., that I can use to give me the most competitive advantage, and that might mean doing things better in terms of the way you do it. But the danger is that you become more and more legacy in what you're doing, and the world has moved on, and that you just can't. There is no business to be done in the longer term. So the third way of doing it is by trying to look at where the future is going, look at what you've got in terms of the resources that you've got, and look at what capabilities can you create that will allow you to move with the times, because sometimes it's not very clear what that end point might be. But if you can line yourself up by creating capabilities that allow you to move in whatever direction the world might be going in, then that might be somewhere where you might want to be able to invest time and effort as well. So this and the previous slide are just ways about being able to pull out some of the drivers and the investment decisions that you might need to make as a company. Now, I can hear people already saying, well, I'm a project manager, so why do I really need to be worried about this? Well, maybe you don't all the time, but it is useful to understand where some of these decisions and drivers have come from, because it then really helps when delivering projects downstream. If you understand why you're being asked to deliver the benefits you're being asked to deliver, you can make sure that any decisions you make around project, and if you're having to compromise at all, you can make sure that they're delivered towards achieving the benefits that you're trying to achieve. So if we're going to, the next slide then really talks about looking at a project and program investment portfolio. So let's say there are a whole host of projects and programs that are going to be delivered as part of the organization. They can essentially be grouped into four different groupings. So in the top left, we've got what we call strategic projects. Those are the things where we think we're going to do those projects which will allow us to achieve any future business strategies that we might have. Top right, we've got high potential projects, and these are R&D type projects, things where we might feel that we need to invest something in the future. There may be something that's coming along which we think might allow us to move in a particular direction, and so those are projects we might undertake. Bottom left, we've got key operational projects, and these are the ones really about making sure that we can sustain the current level of performance we've got, or even improving it, and those might be things to just make things more efficient. And then we've got what we call the support projects, which are really about making sure that we're able to deliver things at the lowest possible cost, etc., and with the best productivity that we possibly can get. So what I'm going to do is use a supermarket example of a number of particular projects just to see where those might fit into these particular boxes. So in the top left, we've got the idea of having multi-vendor loyalty cards, merchandising promotions. We might be looking at bringing new products into a supermarket. We might decide that we're not just going to do food. We might branch out into clothing or toys or electrical goods or whatever. Those could be all examples of strategic projects that are really pushing you towards being able to maintain your competitive situation. High potential, I put RFID. Now, I put this presentation together originally probably 2 or 3 years ago, and you might argue that RFID nowadays probably comes in the strategic area of things, because RFID is being used quite a lot with goods and things. But back then, clearly it was something that companies were experimenting with. Walmart's, I know, did a lot of work with RFID 3 or 4 years ago. And look at what they can do with that and see how successful that can be. In terms of operational projects, warehouse management, point of sale systems, the tills and things that are used, any logistics and distribution. You might want to do something about improving accounting systems, where you a store location planner that says here's the best places for putting the goods out that you've got, and also online retailing and making that available to people. And then finally, on the support side, we've got various application tools, word processing, payroll, any property management things we might do. So those hopefully give you some sort of examples of the sort of projects and how we might categorize those projects. Remember that slide and the slide before, because we're going to come back to that in a little while. So if we've sort of worked out what our drivers and where we think we're going to put our investment options in, the next thing to do is to start trying to identify what benefits that we might have associated with those investment objectives and drivers. And so what I'm suggesting here is a small mini process to be able to allow people to identify benefits. So work out what are the various ISIT investments, or even, they don't have to be ISIT investments, they could be any business investments that you want to make. Work out what that strategy is, what the business drivers are associated with that. Identify a sponsor and who the key stakeholders might be in order to be able to work out what it is you need to do. Having done that, you're then sort of ready to have a first workshop, and a workshop you would hope to come out of that. What are the objectives in terms of the investment that you're trying to make, what you're going to do, come out with a benefits dependency network, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute. And then having done that, you should be in a position to have a sort of initial business case and have done some stakeholder analysis as well. Having had that first workshop, you then need to do a bit of analysis on those benefits and the changes that you want to make, have discussions with the stakeholders, work out what benefits you're going to do, how are you going to measure them, how you're going to quantify them, and work out whether there are any enabling changes, and I'll talk about what that means in a minute as well. Having sort of worked out all of that, you're then sort of really in a position then to start reviewing and working out what the scope of the project is, the scope of and working out the objectives, what the change plan is. Just check that stakeholders are comfortable with what you're doing, how risky is it, what you're trying to do, and make sure everybody's really comfortable with that. If you've got agreement and everybody's comfortable and understands it, then you're in a position to prepare the full business case and a benefits realization plan, any costing associated with that. You then take it to an investment board to get approval, and then you're in a position to set up the formal project arrangements and start the project itself. So again, those things sometimes happen before the project's even really started, but it's really useful if you can to get the project manager involved in those early stages in order to be able to really understand that whole idea of benefits and why we're doing what we're doing. If it's not possible, then really trying to get information from some of these meetings and workshops that happen is useful in terms of helping you understand what you can do and how you can help. So identifying benefits can sometimes be quite a tricky thing to do. So what I've done on the next few slides is really just give some examples of benefits in particular areas that can help almost as a starter for tenors. These are the sort of things that you might want to be thinking about. So from a strategic point of view, does it support the organization's strategy or vision? What's the long-term, short-term viability of the organization? Working out what a unique value proposition is. it might be as simple as just wanting to be seen as being innovative. It allows you to do lots of business models. I'm not going to go through every single one, but there's a whole list there. They're available on the handouts to look at afterwards if you want to have a look at that. Then we've got a whole set of benefits associated with management, increased agility, better control through better information, improving the workforce, helping ease of operation, improving quality of working life for people. So there are whole lots of management benefits there. Then some of the ones that people would more traditionally think of and probably find slightly easier to measure around operations, effectively using IT systems, get better quality at lower cost, improving turnaround time, reducing the headcount of people you need, reduction in property costs, all sorts of things like that. So those, again, good examples of benefits that you can use as a start for 10, and then sort of really dive into those and work out how you might be able to use those in the projects that you're doing. And then finally, I've got a slide on functional and support benefits. And again, those are around things that you might be able to do. So I talked about a benefits dependency network, and I'm going to show you one of those next. And this is a diagrammatical way of being able to show how benefits fit with objectives and drivers and changes and things that you need to make. It starts on the right hand side. So we've got the drivers that the corporation have got in terms of where's the organization heading, what are the things that we need to invest in to enable to us to meet those drivers that we're trying to get to. What are the benefits then associated with those objectives? Having identified what the benefits are, what are the changes that we need to make, the business changes to the organization in order to be able to achieve those benefits? And what you see there is that some of those changes might give you more than one benefit, and one benefit might require more than one particular change. So in order to create the business changes or make the business changes, there may be a whole load of facilities and IT that you might need to do to be able to make sure that you're able to deliver those changes. And equally, you might have a set of enabling changes, which are things that you have to do, which whilst they don't directly give you business benefit, you can't do the business change without having those enabling changes. And a good example of that might be if you've decided that you're going to do something in a completely different way to how you've done it before, then there may be a whole lot of training that you need to do to your workforce to enable them to use the new process, the new tools that you might have created. And that's really what an enabling change is. So it's a change that doesn't directly give you business benefit, but you can't make the business changes without having made those enabling changes first. And those enabling changes, say, may well have something to do with the facilities and technology that you're using as well. Okay, that's that slide. Next, we'll talk about the investment business case. So we've identified the drivers, the investment objectives, the business changes we need to make, any enabling changes that we might need to make, and then also the facilities and technology that we might be introducing. So we've got, if you're trying to put a business case together, then the sort of structure for doing it is really about creating the drivers for change that will give rise to a set of investment objectives, which result in a whole host of benefits, which might be doing new things, might be doing things better, or might just stop doing things that we do at the moment. There's a whole set of costs associated with doing those things. They might be ongoing costs, they might be one-off costs, they might be changes in infrastructure, there might be some business change costs. And then there's also a set of risks associated with doing this work, which might be financial, they might be technical, they may be associated with business change. So if you structure a business case like that, then it can become quite clear. And it's certainly something that I use when I'm doing investment business cases to senior managers. I tend to use that structure. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? What will we gain by doing it? What's the cost associated with it? And what's the risks to doing it? And generally, if you can answer those 5 points, you'll answer most of the questions that you're likely to get in terms of doing those things. So, so recap the first phase and the dimensions of business management. We're looking at why do we want to improve? What improvement do we want? How can we get it? What are the benefits and where will each occur? Can they be measured? Can they be quantified? Can a financial value be put on it? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Who's responsible for the delivery? What changes are needed? Who will be affected by those changes, and how and when will the changes be made? Having done that, we're able to create a benefits delivery plan, and then we can look at whether the benefits have been achieved. Can we achieve yet more benefits, and what any further actions we might have? And the benefits delivery plan is something I'm going to talk about in the next phase. So we've talked about identifying and structuring benefits. Now we're going to talk about planning benefits realization. And the various phases in that is about working out how you're going to measure the benefits and the changes that you're putting in place, making sure you get agreement from all the various stakeholders in terms of what their responsibilities are and what their accountabilities are. And then we'll produce a benefits plan and an investment and a full-blown investment case. So let's talk about the types of investment we might be able to get. There's 4 levels here. And we're talking about degrees of explicitness. So we can have financial benefits, which is really a real proper value that's quantifiable and that we can use. And generally, nobody tends to argue with those because you can see immediately what the value of what you're getting is in relation to the cost that it is to produce that benefit in the first place. So that's the first set. Then you've got quantifiable, which might not be easy to necessarily put a financial value on them, but it's still in a position where you can work out pretty much how much value you're going to get from being able to do that particular benefit. And then following on from that, we've got measurable benefits. So these are benefits where you can measure them. So it may be that it's not something you've done before, but you can work out by how much you've improved over what you're doing at the moment. So there's a measurable, and then we've got what the fourth sort, which is observable benefits, which essentially are just things where we can see that things have improved, and that might be something in terms of how happy your customers might be. Yes, there are ways of being able to measure that by doing questionnaires and things like that. But sometimes if you're working closely with your customers, you may immediately see that people are much more happy about using something and getting quite excited about something. And so there are ways of being able to do that. Now, if you were doing projects where you really only had observable and maybe some measurable benefits associated with them, you might find it difficult to put an investment case together for those projects. But what I find is that depending on the sort of projects that you're producing means the sort of benefits that you're going to produce tend to be different. And that's shown on this slide after this one. The first thing I want to say about this is much like goals and SMART goals, with the performance measures, the benefits you're producing, they have to meet these criteria. Essentially, they have to be relevant in terms of what you're trying to produce and whether it fits in with the organisation strategy. All very well if you're producing something you think is going to make some fantastic savings or something, but if it doesn't fit in with the organisation strategy because they're not going that way, then that may be something you don't want to do. They need to be really clear and defined, and they need to be unambiguous so that people understand them and they can understand how they're calculated. They have to be owned by somebody. If they're not, the chances are they won't get delivered. And you can't rely on other people being responsible for being able to deliver those benefits if they're not part of the overall project team, one of the stakeholders, etc., because they've got no skin in the game if they haven't got any ownership of those benefits. They need to be comparable, by which we means that you need to be able to compare them over time, so you can see that things are improving or not. And they need to be contextual, by which we mean they can't be misinterpreted. They've got to be really clear and understood. So the next slide is really about the various different sorts of benefits and what sort of projects would have which sort of benefits. So we'll start on the top left with the strategic projects. You'd hopefully expect some things to be financial, some things to be quantifiable, but a lot of them may be measurable, especially if you're doing things that you've not done before. You may have nothing to reference it to be able to make a really good financial benefit associated with it. On the high potential stuff, which is the R&D things that we're talking about, there you might expect a lot more observable benefits and measurable benefits, and probably not a lot of financial stuff. I imagine that quite a few high potential projects that you do, you might try out and then decide that they're not working and throw them away. But that doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't have a go at them, because that's where your potential business success and what makes you different from other companies might come from, is doing those sort of projects. When you get down to the key operational projects, that's much more around financial and quantifiable things, and it's around much more about doing things better and stopping doing things that you've done in the past, not so much about doing new things. You might get some of that. And then support, you would expect all of those projects really to have proper financial benefits associated with them, and it's about stopping doing things and doing things better. So that gives you an idea as where those benefits fit and which ones are acceptable, because I do get asked quite a lot, well, what if I haven't got any quantifiable, measurable financial benefits, does that mean we shouldn't be doing the projects? Well, in some cases that might be the case, certainly if you're doing a support project or a key operational one. But if you're doing the more strategic, high potential stuff, then that might be acceptable. So another key thing is really understanding your stakeholders. When you're doing a project, there are going to be some people that get a big benefit out of doing a particular project, and they will also get have to make quite a lot of change as well. If they are having to make a lot of change and they're getting a lot of benefits, then they'll be fairly positive about the project that they're trying to do, but they'll probably also be confirmed about the change. And you just really need to make sure that you understand how they're feeling, make sure that you deal with any resistance that you might have with the change and really focus on that. If, however, they're getting lots of benefits and they've really not got to make much change at all, then they're going to be really supportive of the project you're trying to do, and you should really use those sort of people to help influence others that might not be quite so happy about the whole thing. Bottom left, if you don't get very many benefits, but you haven't got too much in the way of change, then they're probably not going to be that fussed about the project in the first place. So it's just making sure that they don't become too apathetic about what you're doing, because that could influence and affect other people as well. The group that you really do need to spend quite a bit of time managing and dealing with is the group that get very little benefit but having to make significant change in what they're doing. They're likely to resist anything you're doing on the change and the project, and you really need to deal with that, and that might need even other projects to be able to manage that, whether it be through education or training or whatever it might be, but just to really make sure that you're doing it. And understanding where your stakeholders fit within that box is really important, because it then impacts how you actually deal with those particular individuals. Okay, so I said I'd show you a benefits realization plan. This is just an example of one that I've used in the past. We have the benefits down the left-hand side with a description of them. You need a benefit owner associated with it. What are the changes that are going to allow you to achieve those benefits? What are the measures you're using to measure them, and what are the expected values, and when's it due? And I find that that's something really quite useful, and I can share that with my my governance boards to show how my projects and programs are going. And if I'm achieving benefits, then I like to be able to show them straight away that those benefits are there and that they're gaining them. So that gives them a level of confidence that we're delivering what we said we would do. But I also use it to highlight where I don't think that benefits are going to be achieved or we're having problems with them, so that we can start to take actions to make sure that we either correct that or stop things from happening and deciding we're not going to do those projects because we're clearly not getting the benefits we thought we need to. But it allows you to do that in a quite objective manner as you're going through a project. So I said I spent a lot of time on the first two. We'll briefly talk through the last three steps. So having created that benefits plan and being able to manage it through the project, executing the benefits plan is about managing the projects and the change programs that you've got and making sure you're reviewing progress against that benefits plan. When you've got to the end, you review and evaluate the results. You need to make sure that you've actually achieved the benefits you said you were going to achieve at the beginning. If there are outstanding benefits, you might decide you're going to initiate some action to get those additional benefits that you said you were going to do. If it's feasible, if it's going to cost too much, you might decide, well, I'm not going to gain those outstanding benefits, so we're not going to do anything. Or you might decide you want to create another project to try and get those extra benefits from some of the stuff you've learned. Identifying lessons for other projects is always helpful and useful. If you find certain things that have worked and things that have really helped to identify benefits or measure them and things, then it's really good to be able to identify those lessons for other projects. And then the final step is really about identifying any potential further benefits you might be able to get through doing additional projects and work. And there might be things that weren't even considered when you first started out on the project and program, that when you got into it, you found that they could be more achieved by doing some additional stuff, but it was decided not to do it as part of the project because it would just extend it too far. So if you can, then you just go back round and push those back into the overall process again in order to be able to try and get those additional benefits. A lot of the stuff that I've shared with you comes from that book called Benefits Management Delivering Value from IS and IT Investments by John Ward and Elizabeth Daniel. John Ward certainly comes from Cranfield University. I found a lot of good stuff, and some of the things that I've gone through here have come from that book. And they are things that I have used in practice in my projects to help manage benefits. And I've certainly found that using some of that stuff has really helped because we had nothing in our organization that really showed you and helped you with benefits management. Everybody said it was important, but there was no real tools or processes or help that could be gained. And I found very little, certainly within our organization, but also outside as well. And this was one book I did find that was useful, and I say it really helped me. So we've come to the end. That's all I've got to say. I will hand back to Merv, and if you've got any questions, I'm more than happy to take them in the time we've got remaining.
Okay, thanks ever so much, Mark. We've got a couple of questions come in, so we'll work through those. Really a question, I suppose, around tools. Are there particular tools that you recognise organisations use to do effective benefits realisation management? So
the tools that I've used quite effectively are the benefits plan that I had, the benefits realisation plan, and I also find the benefits dependency network, which was the picture, the colourful picture with the drivers, the objectives, the business changes, and if you plot that out and put in all those various changes, you can sort of see what things you need to do to affect the realisation of those benefits. The difficulty with that one sometimes is it can get a bit large if you've got lots of benefits and things, and you need a big sheet of paper to be able to do that. But those are the ones that I've used. But there's nothing formal out there that I've seen that, you know, everybody says this is the tools that you should be using or these processes you should be using for that.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And you'll remember from the introduction, we were talking about high-performing projects or champion organizations and this whole business of high levels of benefits realization management maturity. Do you have any thoughts on how organizations can improve their level of maturity?
A lot of it's around practice and putting in a set of processes and really, rather than paying lip service to some of these things, really getting in and doing it, practicing it. And those are the organizations that will see that high level of maturity in terms of benefits and things. It is getting down to the down and dirty and really going through it and understanding it and being able to relate it back to the strategies of the organization. I think certainly in the last couple of years, particularly the PMI's focused on this quite a lot, is about trying to almost become a strategic execution organization that allows you to take the strategy from an organization and deliver the projects and things that you need to in order to be able to follow that strategy.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And one question we've got here, I'm referring back to your slides, I think this was from Stavros. He wasn't entirely sure what you meant on slide 15 when you were talking, I think this was about the strategic projects and building barriers to entry. So what did you mean there?
So there are sometimes if you're doing a particular project, if you're in a particular organization and you're trying to stop other competitors gaining the same advantage that you have, there may be things you can do to stop them from doing it. I'm trying to think of a good example of that. But let's say you're building a new computer, for example, and to do that, you're using a particular chipset, which isn't generally available on the market. One thing you might decide to do is actually go out and buy all the chips associated with that so people can't copy that particular computer. Now, that might be a problem with monopolies and stuff like that, but I just try and use it as an example of where you might try and build a barrier to stop other people from getting entry to what you're doing. So I think that's what that means.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that. And I guess probably one final question here. I think in your investment portfolio, you talked about 4 different types of projects: strategic, high potential, key operation, and support. And I wonder if you have any views on which of those might be most amenable to working through in terms of benefits realization management.
I think the easiest ones to do, and I'm going to flick through to the slide I showed near the end here, are the operational projects, because they're the ones where you've got real benefits you can see straight away, and they're quite easy to measure. They're quite easy to put a financial value on, and therefore they tend to be the ones that are easiest to do. That doesn't mean to say that they're going to give you the most value in terms of what you're doing. I think they're all important in their own way, because if you're only doing things that are key operational and support type projects, then you're not really moving your organization forward in terms of doing new stuff and being able to keep up with the times. You'll eventually get yourself into a situation where the rest of your competitors have gone past you and left you behind, and you're stuck. And you might be the most efficient company at doing it, but if you're not selling a product or providing a service that anybody wants, then that's not going to really help very much. So I think they're all quite important to get the right balance, but only you will know what that is in the companies that you work for to be able to work out what that might be.
Okay, thanks for that. In fact, we've got just one more question come in. So what is the best way to define benefits, top down or bottom up, as stakeholder perspectives may differ?
I think you need to do it top down, would be my view of the world. I don't see, if you can't relate it back to what the organisation is doing strategically, then you have to ask the question, well, why am I doing this? Because, and there might be lots of benefits that you can identify that you could do, but if it's not actually in line with the organisation, its direction and the drivers it's got, then you're going to be fighting against a level of opposition that you just won't be able to get over, because people go, I don't understand why we're doing this and why this is important for us. So I think you have to go top down.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you for that. Let's flick back across and just kind of one or two bits of administration as we finish up here. So if I share my screen, let's do this one here. Okay, so what I've done, I've come across to the PMI talent triangle, and people will know that for participating in this webinar, you can actually claim 1 PDU point. And what you'll see here in terms of that triangle is 3/4 of that point goes over to the strategic element, which I think is kind of absolutely bang on in terms of what Mark's been delivering to us. And then 1/4 of that goes to the leadership element. So if we flick on, in terms of that, so you can claim your PDU using this code in the usual place. This recording will be made available very shortly. It'll be up in the digital library. The details of what's in that library are in the handout that you will have been able to download, and the password for members only is there displayed for you, PMI UK Digital. So please enjoy that when it comes along. Also, at the end of the afternoon, you're going to get a short survey to complete as well, and we'd love you to send that back to us. If you've got any specific questions or points for discussion, Mark has kindly made available his email address, so he'd appreciate you sending anything through to him, and he'll turn that around as quickly as he's able. Finally, really just a couple of future events to mention. First of all, and a really exciting event here in terms of the report that I've mentioned, the Pulse of the Profession report, Success in Disruptive Times. And Katerina Latona, who's PMI board chair, will be in the UK on the 6th of March. First of all, she's going to be at Project Challenge, where PMI do have a stand, and she's going to be talking there at 12:30 about this important report. And then there's an additional event being laid on in the evening in London at 5:45, and it would be great if you were able to attend that one. And then the next in our series of digital events, we have another session. We're keeping with the theme of benefits, earned benefit program management, and we welcome Kik Piney to come along then and speak to us. I think Kik Piney was on this call as well, so he'll be able to sort of pick up on the themes that Mark's been giving us. That's on the 27th of March, the usual time of midday, and that's in just 4 weeks' time. And we can continue to put together our program of events. If you'd like to speak yourself or nominate someone else, then please feel free to do that. So we'd like to hear from you. And finally, again, I'd like to thank our speaker, Mark, for a fantastic webinar, and Juliana for your support in the background. Thank you for attending, and we look forward to hearing from you again in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending.